In Quentin Tarantino's rich tapestry of unforgettable characters, Drexl Spivey from True Romance, though a supporting character, stands out as one of the most fascinating and complex. Drexl, played by Gary Oldman, is a brutal, unhinged drug dealer and pimp who operates with a twisted sense of identity, adopting the persona of a white man who believes he is black. While his screen time is limited, his impact on the narrative and the audience is undeniable. In this video, I'm going to explore why Drexl Spivey is one of Tarantino's most layered minor characters, focusing on his multidimensional nature, his symbolic role, and the unforgettable performance of Gary Oldman. Drexl Spivey is a mass of contradictions, which is one reason he leaves such a lasting impression. On the surface, he is a caricature of violence and madness. A white man with dreadlocks, a scarred face, and a heavy appropriation of black street culture. This blend of seemingly incompatible traits makes Drexl a character who feels both grotesque and intriguing. His absurdity adds a layer of dark comedy typical of Tarantino's characters, but underneath that is a profound, unsettling question of identity. Drexl's appropriation of black culture, from his mannerisms to his dress and speech, suggests a deep crisis of identity. He is a character who doesn't fit into any world, making him an outsider in both white and black communities. Tarantino often writes characters who exist on the fringes of society, and Drexl is a prime example of this. His identity performance isn't simply an offensive stereotype, it's a critique of people who commodify and distort cultures they don't understand. This kind of contradiction between how Drexl perceives himself and how he's perceived by others creates tension in the viewer, adding depth to a character that could easily have been a one-dimensional villain. Though Drexl Spivey's screen time is short, his symbolic presence looms large. In True Romance, he is the obstacle that Clarence must confront to rescue his love interest, Alabama. In typical Tarantino fashion, Drexl's role isn't just that of a simple villain, but of an anarchic force representing chaos and danger. His unpredictability and savagery give the film's early scenes a palpable tension, and his ultimate fate at the hands of Clarence propels the story into a new phase. Drexl serves as the catalyst that transforms Clarence from a timid comic book clerk into a confident, if morally questionable, anti-hero. Moreover, Drexl's encounter with Clarence can be seen as a metaphor for Clarence's own confrontation with masculinity and violence. Tarantino often explores themes of hypermasculinity, and Drexl embodies the most grotesque, exaggerated form of it. He's a man whose sense of power comes from violence, intimidation, and a distorted sense of cultural ownership. Clarence's victory over Drexl can be interpreted as Clarence rejecting this toxic masculinity in favor of a more self-determined version of himself, though the film complicates this interpretation as Clarence himself increasingly adopts violent behavior. A key factor in Drexl Spivey's status as one of Tarantino's most layered minor characters is Gary Oldman's performance, which elevates the character from an interesting idea to a truly iconic figure. Oldman's portrayal is unhinged and terrifying, yet filled with unexpected moments of charisma and dark humor. The flamboyant, manic energy he brings to the role gives Drexl a magnetic, unpredictable quality. Oldman transforms Drexl from a mere gangster into something far more fascinating. A man who seems to enjoy living in a constant state of performance, whether through his exaggerated speech patterns or his menacing body language. What makes Oldman's performance stand out is how he balances the absurdity of Drexl's character with a genuine sense of menace. The scene where Drexl interrogates Clarence is a masterclass in tension, as Oldman switches between being eerily calm and explosively violent, leaving the audience constantly unsure of what Drexl will do next. This unpredictability is essential to what makes Drexl such a compelling character. He embodies the chaotic violence that runs through much of Tarantino's work, but with a unique flair that makes him impossible to forget. Drexl's character also fits neatly into the broader themes that pervade Tarantino's filmography. Tarantino's characters are often defined by their relationship to violence, and Drexl is no exception. However, what makes Drexl particularly interesting is how he complicates the idea of violence as a source of power. Unlike other Tarantino characters who use violence as a means of control or revenge, Drexl's violence feels more like a desperate attempt to assert an identity that never truly belonged to him. His performative violence mirrors his performative identity, both of which crumble in the face of a real challenge. Drexl's appropriation of black culture adds another layer to this, as Tarantino frequently explores racial dynamics in his work, often through characters who try to navigate racial lines in ways that are uncomfortable, offensive, or subversive. Drexl's identity as a white man trying to inhabit a black persona is a clear critique of cultural appropriation and the ways in which certain aspects of black culture have been commodified by those outside of it. By making Drexl's appropriation both absurd and violent, Tarantino highlights the inherent danger and disrespect in such acts. Drexl Spivey is one of Tarantino's most memorable minor characters, not only because of his outrageous, unpredictable personality, but because of what he represents in the director's broader exploration of identity, violence, and performance. Drexl is a character who forces the audience to confront uncomfortable truths about cultural appropriation, masculinity, and the ways people use violence to create or assert an identity. Gary Oldman's unforgettable performance turns Drexl into a symbol of chaos and danger, making his brief time on screen one of the most compelling moments in True Romance and Tarantino's filmography as a whole.